So, hello and welcome back to the next episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. Today, we're once again going to go through The Snowball, Warren Buffett and the Business of Life by Alice Schroeder, I think she was called. And today, we are indeed going to go ahead with the Buffett family motto, which is spend less than you make, don't go into debt, where we have stopped yesterday. And I gotta have to say, it is a very interesting and also useful book with insights and ideas and thoughts that are pretty valuable. And I, stumbled upon at least a few the last time, and I just tremendously like that. I mean, especially when I also get reminded of the things that I, once read somewhere else or once have heard somewhere else or whatnot. This is amazing, because I tend to forget quite a lot of things, Side note, I'm dying because I'm so fucking hungry. And I actually wasn't been able to sleep quite at all. I'm trying to lean down a bit, and this is definitely not the way to go. I think that I've been talking about it before, but don't do it in that way. If you want to get shredded, if you want to get lean, do it over the course of a few weeks, so that you don't have to die and that your body is going to regulate itself way better. I know that my hormones are completely fucked. I know that my body is completely fucked, to be honest. And I've had it before, week of just struggling, and then on a weekend having a pretty bad cheat day, which is also going to be the case for tomorrow, actually. Maybe also today. Maybe I'm going to go bash it crazy, but even though it doesn't make any sense. I mean, why would I struggle and nearly die the whole week long for then one day of feeling like crap as well, because I've then eaten so much, but don't do it in that way. Doing it in a sustainable way is way better. It makes way more sense as well. I mean, why would you? Why would you be doing it in that way? Why would you be doing it in a way that is actually hurting you so much and also your body so much? I mean, it is a good experience, don't get me wrong. I mean, not has to, but I think it is interesting to see what hunger and those feelings that your body can give you can do to you. I mean, I wasn't really been able to sleep. I'm having headaches. I'm really fucked. I really am. And it is insane. I mean, I shouldn't be doing that. I should really be figuring out a way that's a bit more sustainable and better, but I kind of am a person of extremes, so it is kind of difficult. Anyway, by the time Warren entered kindergarten, his hobbies and interests revolved around numbers. Around age 6, he became fascinated by the precision of measuring time in seconds and desperately wanted a stopwatch. He filled the bathtub with water and picked up his marbles. Each had a name. He lined them up on the flat edge on a bank at the back of the tub. Then he clicked the stopwatch just as he swept the marbles into the water. They raced down the porcelain slope, clicking and rattling, jumping as they hit the waterline. The marbles chased each other towards the stopper. When the first one hit, Warren punched the stopwatch and declared the winner. Really interesting that we know that about him. His sisters watched him race the marbles over and over, trying to improve their times. The marbles never tired, the stopwatch never erred, and unlike his audience, Warren never seemed bored by the repetition. He was learning to calculate odds. Warren looked around him. There were opportunities to calculate odds everywhere, which, by the way, is very interesting and fascinates me as well. It's pretty cool. I mean, the odds of different things and kind of also imagining and thinking about the odds of different things. Like, what are the odds of me dying right now? And so on and so forth. Anyway, the key was to collect information, as much information as you could find. Warren liked anything that involved collecting, counting, and memorizing numbers. He loved to read and spent many hours with books he checked out of the Benson Library. Warren's fondness for miniature continued to develop. By 5th grade, he had immersed himself in the 1939 World Almanac, which quickly became his favorite book. He memorized the population of every city. He got a contest going on with Stu, which is his friend apparently, over who could name the most world cities with populations over 1 million. He wanted money. Period. That's a good one. It could make me independent, and then I could do what I wanted to do with my life. And the biggest thing I wanted to do was work for myself. I didn't want other people directing me. The idea of doing what I wanted to do every day was important to me. Enlisting his sister Doris as a partner, he bought 3 shares of stock for each of them, costing him 114,000. Oh no, I'm sorry, not 1,000, but 114.75 bucks for his 3 shares of Cities Service Preferred. I didn't understand that stock very well when I bought it, he says. He knew only that it was a favorite stock that Howard had sold to his customers for years. The market is lower that June, and City Service Preferred plunged from 38.25 to 27 a share. And Doris reminded him every day on the way to school that her stock was going down. Warren says he felt terribly responsible. When the stock finally recovered, he sold at 40 bucks, netting a 5 bucks profit for the 2 of them. But City Service quickly soared to 202 a share. That is a fucked up place to be at. Anyway, Warren learned 3 lessons and would call this episode one of the most important in his life. One lesson was not to overly fixate on what he had paid for his stock. The second was not to rush unthinkingly to grab a small profit. The third was about investing other people's money. If he made a mistake, it might get somebody upset at him, so he didn't want to have responsibility for anyone else's money unless he was sure he could succeed. Even though, what is the possibility of you succeeding and you quote unquote beating the market? I like saying that because it is something like, yeah, you can't do it. Somehow. Beating, not maybe predicting. It depends on how you just choose words here, but anyway. One of them books was Special, a paperback written by former salesman Dale Carnegie, enticingly titled How to Win Friends and Influence People. He had discovered it at age 8 or 9, which is insane. At that age, I think, first of all, it really is gonna transform you. Second of all, you're actually gonna believe in whatever is written in this book even more than when you read it just when you're 20, 15, 18, whatever. I have read it probably kind of 3 years ago or something. Now I'm 20, so I must have been 17, maybe even 16. I don't remember, but I still recall it as one of the best books that I've ever read in my whole entire life because it was so useful, and I think it still is so useful. Warren's heart lifted. He thought he had found the truth. This was a system. He felt so disadvantaged socially that he needed a system to sell himself to people. A system he could learn once and use without having to respond in a new way to each changing situation. But it took numbers to prove that it actually worked. He decided to do a statistical analysis of what happened if he did follow Dale Carnegie's rules and what happened if he didn't. He tried giving attention and appreciating, and he tried doing nothing or being disagreeable. People around him did not know he was performing experiments on them in the silence of his own head, but he watched how they responded. He kept track of his results. Filled with a rising joy, he saw that the numbers proved the rules worked. Unlike most people who read Carnegie's book and thought, "Gee, that makes sense," then set the book aside and forgot about it, Warren worked at this project with unusual concentration. He kept coming back to these ideas and using them. Even when he failed and forgot and went for long stretches without applying himself to the system, he returned and resumed practicing in the end. On Warren's skill at horse handicapping. Warren read hundreds of books on horse handicapping. He sent away to a place in Chicago on North Clark Street where you could get old racing forms, months of them for very little. They were old, so who wanted them? He would go through them using his handicapping techniques to handicap one day and see the next day how it worked out. I don't even know what this is, by the way. He ran tests of his handicapping ability day after day, all these different systems he had in his mind. Warren thought of all businesses this way. The employees who managed the business shared in the earnings that their labors produced. But they were accountable to their owners, and it was the owners who got the gains as the value of the business increased. Of course, if the employees bought stock themselves, they became owners too, and partners with other capitalists. But no matter how much stock they owned, as employees, their job required them to report to the owners how well they had done. Thus, Warren saw a shareholder meeting as a time of accounting for the stewardship of the managers. As Graham's seminar approached, Warren started memorizing everything he could find out about Ben Graham's method. His books, his specific investments, and Graham himself. From Graham's class, Warren took away 3 main principles. The first one, a stock is the right to own a little piece of a business. A stock is worth a certain fraction of what you would be willing to pay for the whole business. Use a margin of safety. Investing is built on estimates and uncertainty. A wide margin of safety ensures that the effects of good decisions are not whipped out by errors. The way to advance above all is by not retreating. Mr. Market is your servant, not your master. Graham postulated a moody character called Mr. Market who offers to buy and sell stocks every day, often at prices that don't make sense. Mr. Market's mood should not influence your view of price. However, from time to time he does offer the chance to buy low and sell high. That's well put. Gotta have to admit. Warren was a very focused person. He could focus like a spotlight 24 hours a day, almost 7 days a week, almost. I don't know when he slept. He could quote Graham's examples and come up with examples on his own. He haunted the Columbia Library, reading old newspapers for hours on end. I would get these papers from 1929. I couldn't get enough of it. I read everything, not just the business and stock market stories. History is very interesting, and there is something about history in a newspaper. Just seeing a place, the stories, even the ads, everything. It takes you into a different world told by somebody who was an eyewitness, and you really are living in that time. Warren spent hours reading the Moody's and Standard & Poor's manuals looking for stocks, which is, by the way, the S&P 500, Standard & Poor's. I learned that it pays to hang around with people better than you are, because you will float upward a little bit. And if you hang around with people that behave worse than you, pretty soon you'll start sliding down the pole. It just works that way. I went through the Moody's manuals page by page, 10,000 pages in a Moody's industrial, transportation, banks, and finance manuals twice. I actually looked at every business, although I didn't look very hard at some. At that first month, he had parked himself in the file room at Graham Newman and began to read through every single piece of paper in every single drawer, an entire room filled with big wooden files. He had learned the values of gathering as much as possible of something scarce, from license platters to nuns' fingerprints to coins and stamps to the Union Street Railway and the National American. He had always thought his way a born collector. You should never, when facing some unbelievable tragedy, let one tragedy increase into 2 or 3 through your failure of will. If you fuck up with one stock, try not to fuck up with the next one. Charlie Munger, as a very young lawyer, was probably getting $20 an hour. He thought to himself, who is my most valuable client? And he decided it was himself. So he decided to sell himself an hour each day. He did it early in the morning, working on these construction projects and real estate deals. Everybody should do this. Be the client and then work for other people too, and sell yourself an hour a day. And he no longer asked people to invest with him. They had to bring it up. It had to be their idea. People not only would have no inkling what he was doing, they had to put themselves in his position. He converted them into enthusiasts for Buffett and reduced the odds of their complaining about anything he did. Instead of asking a favor, he was granting one. People felt indebted to him for taking their money, making people ask but him psychologically in charge. Kind of sounds a little bit manipulative, but anyway. He was always adding one more thing to his list, but unlike her, Susie Buffett, he never overextended himself. When something new came into his life, something else went out. The 2 exceptions were money and friends. Buying the right company with the right prospects inherent in industry conditions management in DC means, and the price will take care of itself. This is what causes the cash register to really sing. However, it is an inferent occurrence as insights usually are, and of course, no insight is required on the quantitative side. The figures should hit you over the head with a baseball bat, so the really big money tends to be made by investors who are right on the qualitative decisions. Warren had strong views about specialization. He defines his special skills as thinking and making money, which I think is true. Warren disciplined himself to maintain his own weight by dangling money in front of his kids. When they were younger, he made out unsigned checks to them for $10,000 and said that if he didn't weigh 173 pounds on such and such a date, he would sign the checks. Little Susie and Howie went crazy trying to tempt him with ice cream and chocolate cake, but the prospect of giving up money pained Warren far more than giving up a treat. He made out those checks over and over, but he never had to sign a single one. They, Buffett and Munger, won a business that would marmalade them with money, business that had some sort of sustainable competitive advantage and could outwit the natural cycle of capital creation and destruction as long as possible. Time is the friend of the wonderful business, the enemy of the mediocre. It's far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. Charlie understood this early. I was a slow learner, but now, when buying companies or common stocks, we look for first-class businesses accompanied by first-class management. That leads right into a related lesson. Good jockeys will do well on good horses, but not on broken-down nags. Well, makes sense. When Warren got obsessed with something, especially someone new, he couldn't stop thinking about it or them. This came across to a new person as a wholehearted, flattering, and even overwhelming attentiveness. And that's it for today. Incredible words, incredible stories, incredibly interesting. Gonna see you the next time. Bye-bye. Wish you the best.